We are children of splendor and flames, of shuddering also and tears. Magnificent out of the dust we came, and abject from the spheres. Most days on this radio program, welcome aboard everybody, I'm Dr. Peter Glidden, by the way, your steadfast advocate for health. Most days we talk about the dust. We talk about the human body. We talk about the things that you can see, touch, taste, hear, sense, feel, right? The stuff you can measure. This is the stuff that analytical Western reductionistic science is all over. But on Thursdays, we pause, take a breath, and we jump in the pool of metaphysics. Metaphysics, of course, is a broad category of subject material, the broad definition of which is metaphysical phenomena are those phenomena which can't be explained through normal, rational, scientific methods, right? For instance, if you've ever said you love somebody, well, you are practicing metaphysics because you can't prove that you love somebody. Do you love your mother? I'm glad that you love your mother. Prove it. Can you prove it? No. Can you prove the existence of God? No, you can't do that. Can you prove the existence of the soul? No, you can't do that. There are many things which fall inside of the metaphysical zone, and metaphysics is intimately linked with holistic medicine. Because holistic medicine, every single solitary discipline of holistic medicine argues that the human body is possessed by a spiritual force, a vital force, an intelligent force which persisted before you were born and which will persist after the body returns to dust. It is the unseen, vital, spiritual essence inside the human being, which is controlling the show, so to speak. And today we pause from our usual routine and we jump in the metaphysical pool and just have a conversation about it. We talk about it. A couple of weeks ago, I talked to Marshall Govindan, also known as Satchidananda. He's the head of a yoga ashram outside of Montreal, Quebec. Set up hundreds of medical clinics all throughout India, has done massive amounts of public outreach all around the world, educating people about the tenets of a particular portion of the greater Hindu faith, his particular spiritual discipline called Saiva Siddhanta. We talked to him about his spiritual discipline's perspective on the nature of the soul and the whole mind-body thing today. I'm happy to have on board another guest of another religious discipline, Dr. Ken Williams. Dr. Ken is a doctor of theology. In 2007, he became a doctor of theology. He also has a doctorate in biblical counseling. He describes himself as a born-again Christian, and we're going to kick off Metaphysical Thursday today with Dr. Ken. Dr. Ken, are you with me?
I'm with you.
All right. Welcome aboard. So nice of you to find time to be here with us this afternoon. So give our listening audience a little bit of a background on your particular perspective. You describe yourself as a born-again Christian. What's that all about?
Well, according to the Bible, we were created by God and for Him. Therefore, we belong to Him. And also, according to the Bible, especially in Genesis, chapter 1, the first 3 chapters, we have the account of God's creation of the whole world, the universe, everything that you see, smell, touch, and hear, and those things that you don't see. And along with that, the pinnacle of His creation is mankind. And we were, again, created for Him and by Him to serve Him and to enjoy Him. But also, according to the Bible in Genesis, sin crept into the world. Adam and Eve, the first 2 human beings created, decided that they wanted to rebel against God, and that plunged the whole earth and everybody in it into what we as Christians call sin. And the only remedy for sin is faith in Jesus Christ and His atoning death on the cross, which we read about in the New Testament. So to be a born-again Christian is someone who recognizes that, number one, we're sinful, and we don't have access to God apart from the death of Christ on the cross. So when we say we're a born-again Christian, we recognize that we receive Christ into our spirits, as our Savior, because He paid the debt for our sin upon the cross. So when one is born again, that's basically what that means, that they have received Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior.
Excellent description. Now, the operative word there to me in that description is, of course, received into their spirit, right? So, from the born-again Christian tradition, is there such a thing as a spirit or a soul? And if there is, what's the nature of that? And from your point of view, let's just talk a little bit about your particular religious point of view regarding the nature of the spirit or the soul.
Okay. Yes, there is a spirit and the soul. The Bible talks expressly about both and constantly about both. Sometimes the words are used interchangeably, and sometimes they are interchangeable, and sometimes that's just a translation of that particular language into English. And sometimes one can be translated spirit and one can be translated soul. But basically, the spirit is what gives us life, because we have in Genesis 2:7 it says the Lord formed man of the dust and from the ground and breathed, which is the Hebrew word for spirit, into his nostrils, the breath of life. So we have the spirit of life, and once we were breathed into, then we became a living being or a living soul. And the soul then is basically our personality. The soul is the person of a man, which includes the mind, the emotions, the will, the thoughts, the ability to see, think, talk, and to cause the body to walk. It's our center for emotions and personality, and it also is the center for the control of the body. And of course, the body is self-explanatory because we see it, and, we touch it, we use it, and the body is the expression of our existence, the way we express ourselves to the world. Like right now, I'm talking with my hands, even though you can't see me. And we smile, we frown, we laugh, we jump up and down, whatever. That's how we express ourselves to the world. So we have a body, we have a soul, and we have the spirit, which is the life force, as you call it so often. It's what gives us life, because when this body dies, the Bible tells us, and of course everything I talk about comes from a Christian point of view, which comes from the Bible. So when we die, the Bible tells us that we return to the dust of the earth from where we came, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Also, it tells, another passage tells that the spirit departs, and then the man returns to the earth. So you got the spirit, which is the life. You got the soul, which is who we are, and that's the part, by the way, that is saved. Our soul, when the person believes in Christ, becomes a born-again Christian, it's that soul that is saved from that point forward from the ravages of sin and ultimately the punishment of sin that comes later on.
Fascinating stuff, right? So arguably, right, from the Christian point of view, the soul piece of the body, mind, soul, spirit puzzle here is arguably the most important piece, because it's the piece that gets saved, quote unquote. But interestingly enough, paradoxically enough, it's the part of the human complex that is unmeasurable. It's unseen to the human eye. We can't see it, we can't measure it, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't feel it. We can extrapolate its existence, we can intuit its existence, but it exists completely inside of the realm of postulation, experience, and is a de facto manifestation of metaphysics, because metaphysics, of course, argues that, the stuff that can't be measured through normal Newtonian methods all falls into this category. It's fascinating to me that the most important part of the human condition, the spirit, the vital force, the soul essence, is completely neglected and not talked about at all inside of conventional medicine. And we're going to riff on this a little bit in the next segment. But from your point of view, from the born-again Christian point of view then, so let me see if I have this straight. There is such a thing as a soul. There is such a thing as a vital force which inhabits and informs the human body. And at the moment of death, the soul exits the human body. Is that correct? Does the soul leave the body at the moment of death?
Yes, that's what we understand from the Bible, and that's what we teach.
All right, now that's an interesting thing to talk about, right? Because even if you don't believe in the soul, even if you are, an agnostic or an atheist, and you have no conceptual ideation of Godhead whatsoever, you must, just through observation, see that there is something else going on here. Because at the moment of death, what happens to the human body? It decays. It starts to fall apart. It's the same biochemistry that was in the human body 10 seconds after death as there was 10 seconds before death. So why does the human body start to decay? Well, I'll tell you why it starts to decay, because Elvis has left the building. The soul force, the vital force, the spiritual force, the breath of life is no longer in the body. And it was that breath of life, that spiritual metaphysical presence, which was holding the whole thing together. Not only holding the entire thing together, but also being responsible for all of the billions of biochemical reactions that are happening every second of every day inside the human body. And your medical doctor is clueless about this, which is one of the most ironic things that ever happens in my mind. I don't see how people can hold both of these things. I do not know how it is possible for a medical doctor to be a religious person, because when they're at work, they're atheists. But when they come home, they're spiritual people, and I don't see that is a complete conflict of interest to me. We're going to talk about that more when we come back. Stick around, folks. It's Metaphysical Thursday. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden, and our very special guest, Dr. Ken Williams. Much more to come. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Ken Williams is our guest here on Metaphysical Thursday, talking about the nature of the soul and the vital force from the born-again Christian point of view. Welcome back, Dr. Ken. So, what about healing? From the born-again Christian point of view, is there mention of the notion of healing, and how does that all shake down from your faith's point of view? Okay,
the notion of healing in general is kind of absent in the scriptures. The notion that God can heal, and that God does heal, and that He is ultimately the author of healing, is all throughout the scriptures. And of course, there's scriptures that talk about God doing miraculous healings, where the dead were raised, or people were so sick that God had to come in and intervene in a miraculous way. There's that in there. But as far as talking about healing in general, we don't see that much talked about in the Bible at all. However, we are created by God. The Bible says we are wonderfully, created by God, that we were, put together purposefully in our mother's womb, in detail, and that all of the days that we're supposed to have were written for us before one of them came to be. And you and I and every medical doctor in the world knows that the body is a very complicated, complex organism. But God made it very simple to take care of, because He put within it the ability to heal itself on a daily basis. If you treat the body right, good water, clean air, some exercise, and then you eat the right nutrients, then the body is going to take care of itself, unless you fall off a cliff or get run over by a tractor or something. The body is going to take care of itself. Now, God, in the beginning, before the fall of mankind and before the world was plunged into sin, God created the food. All we had to do was pick it up and eat it. We didn't have to read the labels to know that everything that we needed was in it. He made it very simple for us to eat and give the body the nutrients that it needs to stay alive and to heal itself, from the everyday maladies. But, as time has rolled by over the last, and I would argue over the last 10,000 years or so, the world has become increasingly sinful. soils have become more and more depleted to where you and I and most people in Youngevity believe that the nutrients in the soil just aren't there anymore. So we have to go get them. We have to go find them in order to put them in. But having said that, once the nutrients are in the body takes care of itself. That's pretty much what I believe and what most Christians believe, even if they don't think about it in those specific terms.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, really, to think about. And this notion of the self-regulating mechanisms of the body, the self-regulating ability of the body, is completely absent in conventional MD allopathic training. It's completely absent in conventional medical disciplines, and it even gets to the level of absurdity, right? It's called reductio ad absurdum in Latin. Everything is reduced to the absurd. Your psychiatrist, trained as an MD in the allopathic reductionistic school of thought, ladies and gentlemen, is trained to believe, but believe it or not, that consciousness itself is a function of biochemistry. And that once you're dead, everything stops, and that you're just basically, a bag of biochemicals that happened by some evolutionary mistake a couple of million years ago in a Jurassic Park swamp, and then evolved into the human being that you are today. And your consciousness is not separate and distinct from you. Your consciousness is a function of your biochemistry. And that once your biochemistry ends, your consciousness ends. This is actually what psychiatrists are taught to believe. And if this is, I think, my most important message here on Fire Your MD now, just pulling back the curtain and showing people how the MDs are trained and how they think. Because nobody knows how they're trained and how they think. And if you or anybody else really knew how the MDs are trained and how they think, especially about stuff like this, which cuts right to the core of what it means to be a human being. The last person you would bring your body to when you're suffering with any type of a chronic ailment is someone with an MD after their name, because they just don't get it. Their philosophy is completely out of step with what it means to be human. They've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. They're like, colorblind artists trying to paint a portrait. They're going to get it wrong. It's only a matter of time until they get it wrong. It's a built-in prejudice, and it's killing us. Their prejudice is killing us. This is why we must abandon ship. We must abandon the MDs. The medical system doesn't need to be regulated. It needs to be abandoned. I'm back with Dr. Ken after these messages. Stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the last section. Talking with Dr. Ken Williams, Doctor of Theology in 2007, also a doctorate in biblical counseling. He's a born-again Christian, and he's here today having a conversation with me about the Christian point of view of the metaphysical stuff. That's the most important stuff going on here inside the human body. The soul, the spiritual force, the vital force, the breath of life, whatever you want to call it, is completely left out of the philosophy of the allopathically trained MDs, and it is a jaw-dropping realization to come to. That your medical doctor may be a born-again Christian, they may be a Baptist, they may be a Jehovah's Witness, they may be a Roman Catholic, they may be a Mormon, they may be a Jew, whatever. They may be Hindu, they may be Buddhists, but when they go to work, they're atheists, because MD philosophy has no time for the existence of anything it can't measure, and that includes the soul. Now, Dr. Ken, I'm interested in what experience you've had, if any, in talking to people in the Christian community about Youngevity, or, just about our whole everything that we're up to here, like medical nutrition for the masses. Is this an easy thing to talk about to members of your community, or is it trickier? What's going on there?
It's definitely not easy, and it's more than tricky. It seems that most people in the U.S. have been, brainwashed with the commercials on TV, especially people in my generation and your generation and my parents' generation. I mean, what the doctor says goes. It's whatever you say, doc, is a phrase that I've heard most often. I used to work in the medical community as an optician, someone that makes eyeglasses, and also as an ophthalmic technician. My dad was an ophthalmologist. So, whatever you say, doc, goes. And even the younger generation is no different. So it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or non-Christian. If you're talking about healing the body in a way other than going to the doctor, you're talking to a brick wall until you eventually, drip by drip, maybe break through something to let some sunshine, shine in.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a fascinating thing. I've lectured all around not all around the world, but I've lectured outside of this country extensively. I've lectured all around this country, all around Canada, for the last 4.5 years, and I've spoken to many and diverse groups of people, right? I've spoken to, you name it, I've spoken to that group. And one of the more interesting things I've found is that it's much easier to convince people who are of conservative bent that what we're talking about is valid and should be tried. And it's much more difficult to convince people of a liberal mindset that what we're talking about is valid and should be tried. Now, I grew up in New England. I consider myself liberal. I'm kind of a peculiar hybrid mix, a little bit of both. I have I'm conservative economically, and I'm liberal socially, right? I don't really know where that puts me. But it might be interesting. I would think that it might be interesting for those of us in longevity who are, steadfast religious people, because there are many people in longevity, steadfast Mormons, steadfast born-again Christians, steadfast Baptists, steadfast Jews. I mean, it's a big part of their lives, their relationship to God. It may be interesting. I was just thinking about this morning over my gluten-free toast and coffee. That it might be an interesting pitch to say to people, listen, doesn't it say in the scriptures that the body has the ability to heal itself and that God takes care of everything? So and doesn't it also say that, man's body is made from the dust, right? Well, what's the dust made out of? Minerals. Well, guess what? You need to give your body minerals just to give your body the stuff that it needs to regulate itself. It might be useful to kind of cloak the medical nutrition theory that we bring here inside of those terms, which would speak more directly to your particular audience. I would think that born-again Christians, or quite frankly anybody who's of a strong religious faith and has an active understanding and appreciation of the nature and the existence of the soul, would have a clue that, really, there is something to this, and all we really have to do is just give the body its due. Your thoughts, Dr. Ken?
Well, I think that might be an interesting way to approach things with those that are, educated in the scriptures. I personally am not sure that it's going to do much good. I've done a lot of counseling over the years, and when I first began, I thought I could just talk people into or out of depression or out of life issues by showing them what the Bible says, because that's, biblical principles is what Christians go by. But I quickly learned that you can't divorce the mind and the emotions from how the body feels. And if the body is sick, then the mind and the emotions are going to be sick too. So I've talked to people, both ways. And, your let's just use depression, because that's one of my pet projects, is helping people overcome depression. You're depressed, and so let's try this, and this. But if it's not, or if it wasn't at that point in time, if it wasn't sanctioned by the medical community, they were reluctant to even give it a try, because it's a drug. It's something that the medical community is going to give you that's going to get you out of depression. As if we have, a deficiency in SSRIs or something like that. So I'm not hopeful that couching it in those terms are going to make the light bulbs come on.
Yeah, it's interesting because, people are stubborn and people are closed-minded. People think that they're skeptical, but my experience is really people aren't skeptical. People are kind of closed-minded conformists, right? If people really were skeptical, quite frankly, they never would have taken the high blood pressure medication. They never would have taken the metformin. They never would have taken the antibiotic because in many cases it's just ineffective and doesn't work. For instance, with bronchitis, antibiotics don't work, and that's been proven over and over and over again. And yet, medical doctors prescribe antibiotics for bronchitis all of the time. And the patient who doesn't know any better just kind of bends over and takes it and does whatever the doctor says. And I always thought that it would perhaps be another angle here to kind of get our foot in the door with people of religious belief, to have an approach maybe like this. Listen, in order for you to optimize your life and to do the work that God put you here to do, wouldn't it make sense to run down the road of life in a car that's all tuned up and that has everything that it needs, so that you're not depressed, so that you don't have to worry about these little trifly things, so that your ankles and your knees don't hurt when you're walking down the street to help your neighbor who's in a crisis with something? I mean, wouldn't it be better for you to walk through life and get God's work done, if that's what you're up to in this life, and with a healthy body? I mean, wouldn't it be better to do that with a body that's healthy than with a body that's not healthy? Because you're absolutely right, Dr. Ken. When the body is off balance, when the body's under nutrified, because everything's connected, you feel like crap, you think like crap, you can't concentrate, your emotions are all over the place. You're like a fragile egg waiting to break, and it's a big, big problem. People just don't look at it like this, but I guess it comes back, from my point of view, to the parable of the sower with the seeds, right?
Right.
Right. You got to have good seed, though. I mean, that's the most important thing, because the sower had good seeds. And some seed fell on rocky ground, and some seed the birds got, right? Some started to grow and then got strangled out. So, folks, those of you in the chat room, the people that you invited to the radio show and they didn't show up, well, guess what? The birds got them. And that's how it goes. Where people are closed-minded, conformists, and you got to talk to 10 before you get one. But getting that one is worth... Getting one yes is very worth getting 10 no's. Dr. Ken, regretfully, we are all out of time. Anything you'd like to say here as a parting shot?
Yes, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. But I want to make one point. You said the medical-physical part is the most important part, and that is true, because that is the part that lives forever.
Gotta love it, Dr. Ken. Words to remember, words to live by. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a great big round of applause. There he goes, Dr. Ken Williams. Let's see if my applause track is going to work. And it is not going to work. Oh, well, technical difficulties left, right, and all around. Thanks a lot, Dr. Ken. I appreciate you very, very much. We have 3 minutes left in this segment, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take a question from the chat room. By the way, you can watch the live video stream of this radio show by going to thedrgliddenshow.tv, the DRGLIDDEN show.tv. Join in the live chat. By the way, all of this is free. 47 people are in the chat room right now. We have Michael from Germany, Emily, JJ, Graciela, Kathy from Pennsylvania, Vancouver, Washington's in the house, Albany, Oregon's in the house. We've got people all over the world in the chat room right now checking out the live video stream. It's Youngevity Nation, and we're growing faster, better, and stronger every day. What are you waiting for, ladies and gentlemen? Align yourself with Youngevity and make your life better through and through. All right, so let's pick up a question from the chat room here. Hello, Dr. Glidden. Thanks for all your awesomeness. You're welcome. I'm 106 pounds and off the bad foods. I'm on a lot of longevity products, but I'm having major bladder spasms. I have a spinal cord injury, so I use a catheter. Would Super KB be a good addition with the spasms? That's a longevity product called Super Kidney Bladder. It's a herbal support for the kidneys and the bladder. Also, would Nightly Essence be a good add-on to prevent blood clots? I've had them in the past right after I got the spinal cord injury. Great question. Well, in order to keep the blood from clotting, in order to keep the blood at a healthy viscosity, essential fatty acids are of maximum importance. But because you have the catheter and the spinal cord injury, it would be prudent for you to add the Nightly Essence into your daily program, because the Nightly Essence has a naturally occurring biochemical in it called nattokinase. And nattokinase helps the body to dissolve blood clots. So yes, absolutely, it would be a good thing. You're not a candidate for the Super KB as far as I'm concerned, because the spasming of the bladder is, relative to the presence of the catheter and irritation, local irritation to the bladder. So what I would do is up the ante with your calcium and take a little bit more calcium than is appropriate for your body weight. Because remember, anytime any muscle in the body spasms, we need to increase calcium and magnesium, and that's a package deal with the longevity. Check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Fire Your MD Now. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden, and Carol from Illinois is up next. Stick around. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. I had the big applause all queued up, and it didn't work. Bummer. Oh, well, man plans and God laughs. Let's go to Illinois and talk to Carol. Hey, Carol, thanks for the call. You are live.
Hi. Yes, my name is Carol, and I'm from Naperville, Illinois. I'm 65, and I've been dealing with constipation for years. I've been told I have different conditions, irritable bowel. I was told it was because of the way I had my daughter. She was a frank breech. So they did some Erectocele, Stisocele. And I've tried so many different things. Right now, I am doing the Beyond Tangerine with the Osteoflex and the EFA Plus. And I've been trying several different probiotics. I just found out about the gluten-free, so I'm trying that. But I'm working, and what happens is I try these things, and I work in a doctor's office, so you can imagine I'm right up close with these patients. I get so gassy.
Yeah.
And something will work, then it won't.
Well, yeah, I know. It's very frustrating, and extremely so, and this is why my profession's here, right? I mean, this is why this is our skill set. This is where our area of clinical experience shines through, and so you're right in calling me to get my opinion on this, because it's a good one, and it's informed by clinical experience, right? And also medical nutrition education. So that's a good thing. So interestingly enough, Carol, when it comes to the health of the digestive tract, whether it's a constipative issue or it's an inflammatory issue where we have, a loose stool or diarrhea on and off, or gas. Gas actually is associated with constipation more than anything. It's not the nutrients that you're lacking, it's the food that you're eating.
Okay.
The most common cause across the board. Remember, right, in diagnostic science, there's the phrase that when you hear hoofbeats, you think about horses before you think about zebras, right? Because you think about the most common things that cause things before you start thinking about weird things that cause things. So the single most common cause of chronic, unrelenting constipation is consistent consumption of wheat, barley, rye, and oats. So, from our point of view, what's necessary here is to stop eating wheat, barley, rye, and oats.
Right.
But the deal is, right, if you get a mosquito bite, right, you get one little mosquito bite, it takes, maybe 20 seconds for the mosquito to bite you. But you've got a bump on your arm for 14 days, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when we eat wheat, barley, rye, and oats, and the other 10 bad foods, but the other 10 bad foods don't affect the digestive tract as much as wheat, barley, rye, and oats do. There's constant low-grade inflammation to the intestinal tract, constant low-grade inflammation, all the flipping time. Now, when you finally get a clue and stop ingesting that stuff, it's going to take a while for all of that inflammation to tone itself down and for things to start functioning better. Makes sense, right?
Makes sense, yeah.
Okay, so the single most important thing for you to do here, because of your history of constipation, is really pony up to the gluten-free bar and, become the gluten-free queen of Naperville. No kidding.
Okay.
I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's certainly not hard. And it's a million times easier to be gluten-free now than it ever was. Now, in addition to that, I would recommend for 2 months a different longevity product as an add-on. It's called Maquis Plus, MAQUI Plus. I would do 2 bottles of Maquis Plus a month in addition to what you're already doing. Do 1 ounce twice a day. Because the Maquis Plus contains antioxidant ORAC points plus aloe vera. And aloe vera is soothing to the intestinal lumen, and it will really help the inflammation that's incurred there because of the gluten to get better faster. Now, interestingly enough, one other thing that you can do while you're doing this is eat 1 apple a day. Because the fiber in apples, pectin, is extremely beneficial for the health of the digestive tract. And if you simply add 1 apple a day, increase your water consumption a little bit, do the Maquis Plus, go gluten-free, I think by the end of August, you're going to be singing a completely different tune. Appreciate your call. Stick around, folks. Hour 2 coming up.